I suffered a lot, experienced a lot of pain. In times of pain, in times of joys, in times of celebration, we usually like to be surrounded by people who loved us and by people who provide some continuity. That is the extended family. I have absolutely no sense of continuity just based on the people around me. I have no one from my extended family. From the day the war started, I no longer was a child. I saw killings that I didn't understand why and what they meant. I learned that I can no longer depend on my parents to protect me, and that was a very intense and heavy feeling of a very little child. My father, whom I always considered the omnipotent man, no longer could protect me from the events around. When we had to escape Poland, when the Germans stopped our carriage in the middle and took my father off and ripped off whatever he had on. And that was a very sad realization that my father is no longer the omnipotent man who could protect me. I assume it was a combination of two elements: escaping the Nazis and also being so focused and oriented that communism was such a wonderful system for workers that this is the direction they went. I don't know whether they had any other choices where to go to. Coming to the no man's land, the guide who smuggled us across the border, because the borders were closed, the Soviets would not allow anyone to enter, let us out in an area that was surrounded by tall trees. You couldn't see what's beyond that. And he said that we had crossed the border. We huddled up for the remainder of the night. It was extremely cold. And when we woke up in the morning and left that secluded area, we saw not far from us a field with thousands of people laying on the snow in their clothing, leaning against bags, suitcases. To me, it was not scary, but as I was thrown into a different world and was unable to understand what's going on. I woke up one night and there was a strange man next to me under the covers. I tried to push him out, but apparently I fell asleep. When I woke up in the morning, the man next to me was dead. I tried to shove him out, not realizing that he's dead, and then I started calling my dad. I reached my hand to wake him up. And when I was told that the man was dead, I froze in fear, not knowing how someone can lay next to me and be dead. And that episode is very vivid in my mind. People were making fires to warm themselves and to melt the snow for drinking. I was standing with my mother by a fire one day, warming myself. And a young woman approached, holding a baby in her arms. And people assumed that she wanted to warm herself and the infant. And they parted, letting her come close to the fire. But as she got close, someone looked into her arms and said, "Lady, your baby doesn't need warming anymore. The baby was dead." The man took the dead baby out of the mother's arms. I don't think she resisted, and proceeded where the Soviet soldiers were guarding the border. He laid that wrapped up infant on the ground in front of the soldiers. And the people who were around the fire kind of formed a procession, followed him, and they started shouting, "Let us in, let us in. See, we are dying one by one." And this guard didn't say a thing, just kicked that infant back into the crowd. My father smuggled himself across the border one night. I assume my parents realized that they have to take some drastic steps or we are going to die there, as so many others did. So my father smuggled himself across the border. He bribed a Soviet official to give him a letter permitting the family to cross the border. But when he came back with that letter, the letter said he may take his children. It said nothing about my mother, and the guards would not allow my mother to leave. And again, our parents apparently decided that my father should take my sister and myself to safety and see thereafter what he can do to save Mom. We walked the whole night in the forest, and it was scary for me, very scary. And I was amazed that my father knew which way to go in the forest, until we came to a little cabin which my cousin, who was on the other side, rented for one night. And my mother was left on the no man's land. Okay. Then, in the middle of the night, Soviet soldiers kicked in the door of the cabin, and they marched us to a train station where there was a line of cattle cars, and they shipped us to Siberia. And of course, Siberia and labor camp, you probably imagine what the conditions. And it was a time of extreme hunger. When it came to my birthday, my mother asked me, what would I like? Pretend that there is no war. What kind of a present would you like for your birthday? And I told her a big loaf of bread, and that I could eat as much of it as I wanted to. A few months after entering the orphanage, my father died. The village they lived in there was an epidemic of dysentery. There were no physician, no pharmacy. I understand my mother walked the whole night in search of penicillin to some other village. I don't know whether she obtained it or not. But when she came back, my father was dead. He was buried in a communal grave. She didn't even know in which one. Yes. I carried the bread close to my chest to make sure I don't drop it. I try not to look at it. Looking makes me hungrier, but my eyes don't obey. I would like to eat it. What prompted me to write the book at the time I wrote it was the death of Naomi, of my daughter. She kept on asking me continuously to tell her this and to tell her that, and I was finding excuses and postponing I told her little bits here and there because I found some reference to it in her high school writing. But it was basically, for me, telling my story to Naomi post-mortem. When tragedies happen to me, or bad things, I ask myself, have I learned anything from it? And I tried, when the pain subsides, I try to analyze, have I learned anything from it? And I have a great joy of living. Not that what happened to me is totally out of my memory, but it is like in a box stored in the attics. Periodically, I open it. And I really don't have any other explanation.